Welcome to the online training for the Integrated Monarch Monitoring Program, or the IMMP. In this video, you will learn how to conduct a monarch and habitat survey on golf courses through the Monarchs in the Rough program. The Monarch Joint Venture and Audubon International are partnering to collect data on Monarchs in the Rough golf courses. This will help us track prairie restoration progress and help us understand the effectiveness of seed mix design and conservation practices. It will also help us assess the current quality of habitat that exists on the courses and whether monarchs are using these types of habitat. If you choose to participate, you will be required to fill out a site description form and to conduct Activity 1, which involves documenting the habitat, including milkweed and flowering plants. You also have the option to conduct Activity 2, which involves counting monarch eggs and caterpillars on milkweed plants you find. The monitoring should be conducted at least once during the season in which monarchs are present. We recommend visiting the site once during the peak bloom of the season. This would be a July visit for sites in the northern United States, and in the southern United States we recommend visiting once during the spring and once during the fall when monarchs are migrating through. You may visit as many times as you'd like beyond this. For instance, you may conduct one visit per month to track the change in species that are blooming at the site or to check for monarch use. Each monitoring visit will take you roughly 30 to 90 minutes to complete. Here's an overview of the steps you'll take to conduct the golf course monitoring. We will go over each of these steps in more detail in the following slides. To get started, you will first sign our volunteer waiver, which is located on the IMMP homepage. Next, you will need to find a course near you, obtain permission from the course manager, and coordinate a time to visit. Each of you will need to sign the landowner waiver and release of liability form before participating. Then you will document your site on the IMMP mapping application, which will help you generate a unique code for your site. Once you've done these things, you can visit the course and conduct the monitoring. Afterward, you'll submit your data. You may record your data on either paper datasheets or electronically through Survey123 in the field. Survey123 is a free app that you can download on a tablet. It tends to work better on a tablet rather than a smartphone. If you choose to enter on paper, you will enter through Survey123 later on. You can also download this on your computer in addition to downloading it on a tablet. There are many resources to aid you in monitoring on the IMMP website. You will find protocols and datasheet downloads by clicking on the Field Activities and Protocols button. In addition to this video, there are others you can watch ahead of time so that you are able to identify native milkweeds, flowering plants, and monarchs. You can check out the additional resources page to access the landowner waiver, IMMP outreach handouts, and more. You may sign up to receive program updates by visiting the IMMP homepage and clicking on the green button shown here. You may unsubscribe at any time. Now we'll go through the steps in more detail. First, you will need to navigate to our website to find a participating golf course near you. Go to our IMMP homepage at monarchjointventure.org/IMMP. You will find a list of courses and contact information for the course managers. Next, you will need to contact the course manager to obtain permission. Ask for details on the location of the habitat installed, and it is best if they can show you around in person. You will want to choose the largest restored habitat patch at the course to monitor. Then you will schedule a visit with the course manager. As we noted before, you will need to complete the landowner waiver and release of liability form. You can do this on paper and have the landowner sign it in person, or you can fill out an electronic version on our website under the Additional Resources tab. There are more detailed instructions for filling out this form there. Next, you'll need to document your site in the IMMP mapping application. You will need to email monitoring@monarchjointventure.org for access to this tool. Once you get into the tool, you will search for the course address in the search bar, add a location for your site, and you will record that this is part of the Monarchs in the Rough program. Here you can see that there is a search bar at the top of the screen. Type in the name of the golf course or the address, and the map will zoom into the location. Once you've zoomed into the golf course, you'll click on the little orange button at the bottom of the screen called the Site Editor button. A box will pop up and you will see a red button. Click on the red button and place the point on the map over the golf course that you intend to monitor. Once you've done so, another box will come up and you will be prompted to fill out the data fields, first adding in your name. Next, you will be asked to enter the Monarch block ID number. You can find the block ID by zooming out of the map slightly. Once you've zoomed out, you'll begin to see the outlines of a grid on the map, and you will see the ID number appear in the center of each grid cell. When entering this number in, you will be required to enter a 6-digit number. In this case, you will need to add 2 leading zeros before the numbers 4699. You'll then be asked to generate the point ID by combining the letters SS plus your 3-letter initials and a 1-digit number. If this is the first site you are monitoring in the block, you will give it a number 1. If you do not have a middle initial, you can use an X. If you are monitoring as part of an organization, you can instead use the organization's initials if you'd like. Make sure to write down the Monarch block ID and the point ID. You will need to record this on your data sheets for the other activities. Next, you will be asked to record the site type. Golf courses are considered developed open space, so you will select that from the drop-down menu. Then, under Site Type Code, you will select DEV as the code for developed open space. Next, you will be asked about the level of data sharing. This just explains whether we can associate the monarch and plant data at the GPS coordinate level or the point level. Otherwise, we can mask the data to the larger 10 by 10 kilometer block level or the county level. If you have not yet checked with the course manager for their preference, you can come back and edit this later, and you will also mark this on the site description form. You will also want to note in the notes section that this is part of the Monarchs in the Rough program. After you've filled out all of the data fields, you will click the Save button to save your changes. Once you've saved, the point will display on the map with your site ID code. Next, you will monitor the site and first fill out the site description form. Again, you will find this under Field Activities and Protocols under Site Description. You can click on the site description name to find the written protocol, and right below that you'll see the site description datasheet download. First, when filling out the site description form, you will record the visit date and your name. You will use the information you acquired during Step 2 to fill out the plot ID. First, you will record the Monarch block number, which is the 6-digit number of the 10 by 10 kilometer Monarch blocks, which was 004699. Your verified site type code is DEV for Developed Open Space. Your sampling point number was SS for self-selected, DPP for your initials, and the number 1. The original site type code will be classified as DEV for developed, and then again as DEV for your verified site type. Next, you will be asked some questions about the land ownership, conservation status, and plot design. You will also be asked about the adjacent land use to your monitoring plot. Most courses will be classified as private with public access, but some courses may also be public, so you will check either the private with public access box or the public box. Since these courses are undergoing a prairie restoration, you will check the Yes box that these sites are managed for conservation. We are conducting a census survey at these golf course sites, so you will check the Census survey box under Plot Configuration and record the area of the site you are monitoring. You will also need to record the coordinates or a location for your monitoring plot. You will only be required to enter in the location for P1 or a point 1, and you can ignore P2, 3, and 4 on the paper datasheet. You will not be asked to record those in the Survey 123 form. Similarly, you can also ignore the start bearing question on the datasheet. You will not be asked to record that for a census survey in Survey 123. You will also mark the dominant adjacent land use, which is likely a developed area, since you are monitoring a location in a golf course surrounded by the larger golf course area. To obtain coordinates for the P1 location, you can download Google Maps from the App Store. You'll want to make sure to turn on the location settings in your iPhone settings or your Android settings. Then you will open the app and you'll see a blue circle appear on the map. Hold down that location with your finger and you'll see a red balloon appear on the map. You'll see at the bottom of the screen that it also says dropped pin. Pull that little box up and you'll see some information appear. You'll see that it gives you coordinates for that location, a latitude and longitude. Be sure to record those coordinates in the exact format, including the comma, space, and negative on your datasheet. Next on the site description form is information specific to certain site types. Since the golf course sites are not a right-of-way or an agricultural site, you can skip this section. Right below that, however, is a site description note box. In that box, you can note that this site is part of the Monarchs in the Rough program. Next on the datasheet is a section for disturbances. If you see some kind of disturbance, such as mowing or flooding, you can record that in this section. You will record the code listed on the right-hand side, and then the percent that is disturbed to the nearest 10%. You can also write any other details in the disturbance notes box. Next, you will be asked to describe the vegetation in the plot, such as the percent cover of grasses, the percent cover of forbs, shrubs, and trees. You also have the option to describe the common forb species, the common woody species, and the name of noxious weeds present in the plot. You will also be asked about the wetland features that are within the plot you are monitoring. Since this is going to be a small area, likely, within the golf course, you will check the box that says None. You can record any plot vegetation notes in the box here, and if you live in the southern United States, you will report whether you saw any evidence of red imported fire ants at the site. If you did happen to see some, you will count the number of mounds you saw within the plot. At the bottom of the datasheet, there is a section titled Miscellaneous Monarch Observations. This is a location where you can record any monarchs that you saw while conducting the site description activity. There is another place to record monarchs when you are conducting Activity 1 and Activity 2. If you happen to see adults, you will also record the behavior that they are observed doing. Flying and flying high are distinguished between the height that the monarch is from the ground. Flying is when a monarch is less than 5 meters from the ground, and flying high is when it is higher than 5 meters. If you see two monarchs mating, you will put 2 tallies in the mating box. Ovipositing is another word for laying eggs, and if you see this, you will also record the species on which the monarch is laying eggs. Similarly, if you see a monarch nectaring, you will also record the species on which it is drinking nectar. There's another form called the Conservation Site Project Description. This is a part 2 to the site description form, and it is filled out when you have a conservation site. Since these sites are being restored through the Monarchs in the Rough program, they are considered conservation sites, and you should fill out this form with the help of the golf course manager. You will then record the plot ID, the date, and your name. You will also record the date that conservation management began at the site. This date is often the time in which the golf course started prepping the land for restoration. You will also record whether there's any management scheduled for the site in the future. Next, you will indicate the project type, which in this case is for monarchs. You will also describe the conservation program, which is conservation by NGO. In the planting and management history section, you will describe all seeding, site prep, and management activities that have occurred within the plot. Also include the most recent date per action and any additional dates in the notes section for each management activity. You will also describe the previous land use. For these sites, it will often be previously used for lawn or turf or a natural area before the site was seeded. If you select that a native seeding occurred at the site, you will be asked further questions in Survey 123 about the species and quantities added. To complete this section, you will want to ask the golf course manager for the seed mix that was applied at the site. Then, using that seed mix, you will fill out the information on your data sheet, such as the date of planting, the seeding method, and then the species that were planted. You can record either the common name or the scientific name, because when you enter into Survey 123 later on, both of them will be connected. You will also record the quantity for each species added. And then you will record the type of unit, such as pounds per acre, and the unit type, either pure live seed or bulk. Once you've completed the site description form, you will conduct your monitoring doing the Activity 1 census. In the Activity 1 census, you will count the number of milkweed plants you find in the patch according to the species. You will also record the species of plants you see blooming. You also have the option to note any species that are not blooming that you can identify in the note section. Here is what the Activity 1 Census Survey datasheet looks like. In a minute, we will go over in more detail how to fill out each of these data fields. For each species of milkweed observed, count the number of plants and stems. Each stem that is separated by soil is considered a distinct plant for the IMMP, even though they may be in fact connected underground. In this example, we have Asclepias syriaca, or common milkweed. Pictured here are 3 plants with 1 stem each, so we have a total of 3 plants and 3 stems. Some species like butterfly weed, or Asclepias tuberosa, often have multiple stems. The stems originate from a central location in the soil, as pictured here. In this case, we would count the butterfly weed as 1 plant with 4 stems. At these sites, you will be doing a comprehensive survey, or a census survey. This means you will walk through your site, recording every blooming plant species and counting all of the milkweed plants and stems by species. You will zigzag through the plot, making sure to reach every corner of the location. You will not need transects or subplots for these sites because they are very small habitat patches compared to the larger standard IMMP plots. Blooming milkweed has 2 functions. It is a food source for monarch caterpillars and a nectar source for adults. If you encounter blooming milkweed, please make sure to record it twice, once in the blooming plant section and once in the milkweed section. If you observed it but it is not in bloom, you will only record it in the milkweed section and count the number of plants and stems. Now we'll walk through how to fill out the datasheet in more detail. First, you will record the date, the start time for the survey, your name of yourself and anyone else who is joining you in the survey, the plot ID, and check whether you've completed a site description form. It is required that you complete a new site description form for every visit that you conduct. Next, we will record the blooming plant species that you find within the habitat patch. As we discussed, when you find blooming milkweed, you will record it both in the blooming plant section and in the milkweed section. You will also count the number of plants and the number of stems. Next, we find a black-eyed Susan blooming in our plot, so we record that here. We do the same with lead plant and butterfly weed, and since butterfly weed is a milkweed, we also record it in the milkweed section. When we find more milkweed that we've already recorded, such as swamp milkweed, we just add the tallies in the boxes. We continue recording our data as so. Again, you can record any miscellaneous monarch observations in the box at the very bottom. You may tally any blooming plant species that you cannot identify in the box above miscellaneous monarch observations. If you can identify non-blooming plants, you can record those in the notes section. For example, here, we also observed stiff goldenrod and rough blazing star that were not yet blooming. If you can't quite identify the blooming plant species, it is okay to group it to the genus. Solidago or goldenrod species can be especially hard to identify, and so noting them as Solidago species or goldenrod species is entirely okay. There is also a category for unknowns in Survey 123, and as we mentioned earlier, you can record the plants as using either the common or the scientific name. Sometimes plants have multiple common names that are outdated, so if you have trouble locating a specific plant, you can find it on the USDA Plants database. This is a great tool to check the most recent name for certain plant species. If you'd also like to search milkweed plants for monarchs, you can conduct activity 2. You will record your observations by larval instar, so you will need to watch the monarch identification training video if you are not comfortable recording monarchs to their instars. During activity 2, you will record the species of milkweeds you find in the habitat patch. You will record the number of milkweeds examined, the number of eggs and larvae you find, and the instar of those larvae. Again, you have an option to record miscellaneous monarchs if you see any adults while you're doing activity 2. While you're monitoring, don't skip small or unhealthy plants. You'll want to monitor every milkweed you find for eggs and larvae. Carefully examine each part of the milkweed plant. You may find eggs and larvae on every single part of the milkweed, from the bottom of the leaves to the tops, the stems, and even on the flower buds. You may look for caterpillar clues such as little chew marks in the leaves, but this doesn't always mean that you will find them. Sometimes you will even find them without the clues. Be sure to handle the plants very carefully to avoid knocking any monarchs off or squishing them. Please read over Appendix F of the IMMP Protocol Guidebook, and you may watch the Monarch ID training video for tips. Here are some examples of monarchs you may see on milkweeds. Small instars, such as first and second instars, are very, very tiny and are hard to see on milkweed plants. It may help to use a magnifying lens while you're conducting this activity. This is what the Activity 2 datasheet looks like. At the top, you will record the date, your start time, the site ID, your name, and any notes for the site, and then you will be reminded to complete a site description for the day if you had not done so yet. You will separate the milkweed plants you find by species as pictured here. When you find a milkweed species such as common milkweed, you will write the name out in the milkweed species box. You will tally the plants without any monarchs on them in the tally box to the left-hand side of the screen. To the right-hand side, you will record milkweed plants with monarchs present. Each box represents one plant. List the instar of each monarch found on a given plant in each box. For example, here we have a common milkweed plant and we found a first instar and a third instar. You will record under common milkweed a 1, 3, representing the first instar and third instar found on the same plant. Next, we find a common milkweed plant with 1/3 instar. You will write a 3 in another box represent that third instar on a new plant. Next, we have a common milkweed with 1 egg on it. You will record that egg with an E in another new box. Next, we find a common milkweed with nothing on it, so we put another tally in the Plants with 0 Monarchs box. We also find a common milkweed with 5 different monarchs on it, an egg, 3 second instars, and a 5th. We make sure to separate these with commas in the box like this. E, 2, 2, 2, 5. Next, while walking along, we find a new species, poke milkweed, so we record it in a new box. In this case, we found a 4th instar on it, so we record a 4 in the Milkweed Plants with Monarchs Present box. We find another poke milkweed plant with nothing on it, so we record a tally in the Plants with 0 Monarchs box. We find another common milkweed with 2 5ths, so we put 5, 5 back up in the common milkweed section. We continue recording data like this, and when we find any adult monarchs during the survey, we can record those in the miscellaneous monarch observation section below. When you've completed your activities, you will submit your data using Survey 123. There are instructions for using this and downloading the free app on our website under Field Activities and Protocols. Now we will recap and summarize the steps you'll need to take to participate in this program. First, you will find a course near you on the IMMP website. You will obtain permission from the golf course manager and coordinate a visit. Then you will complete the landowner waiver, also getting the golf course manager's signature. You'll need to document your site on the IMMP mapping application, and then you'll monitor the site, completing the site description and Activity 1, and optionally Activity 2. You'll submit your data to us using Survey 123 at the very end. If you have any questions, please reach out to us at monitoring@monarchjointventure.org. Again, you can find all of these resources on our website at monarchjointventure.org/IMMP. Thank you for helping us collect important information about monarchs and their habitats. Happy monitoring!